Good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started in about 2 minutes, giving people enough time to join. Welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 28th consecutive monthly picket action for Free Alex Saab, US-Canada Hands-Off Venezuela. It is an honor to be connected with you all today for a great program of speakers from Italy, Venezuela, the United States, and here in Canada. Before we go further, I must recognize that we're hosting tonight's webinar from the unceded territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations here in Vancouver, British Columbia. This picket action will consist, as usual, of a panel of speakers followed by a time for greetings for people from across Canada, and then a closing group.
Estoy conectando con el Canadá, que ya tenemos el Zoom.
Hola, Geraldina. Geraldina is here with us, which is excellent, one of our speakers. But before we go further, if you're listening to me in English and you don't want to you want to participate in Spanish, there is simultaneous translation available, brought to you by Julieta and Mercedes, who are helping us out tonight. And they, to access the translation, you go to the interpretation feature on Zoom, which is in the shape of a globe, usually at the bottom of your screen, or if you're on a phone, it's under the 3 dots, and you choose the language you want to participate in, either English or Spanish. And we will post some instructions in the chat shortly. If you, hay interpretación simultánea, si quieres participar.
So there is simultaneous interpretation, and if you want to participate
in la idioma de español, puedes participar usando el sistema de interpretación. Hay un símbolo de un globo bajo en tu computadora o teléfono. Vamos a poner las instrucciones en el chat. Gracias. So, welcome again to today's 28th consecutive monthly picket action, which is also a report back from the Lawfare against Venezuela 3 years after the kidnapping of Diplomat Alex Saab International Conference in Caracas, Venezuela, which took place on June 14th, 2023. There were over 50 international guests, of whom Dan, myself, and Geraldina are only 3 of, alongside over 300 Venezuelan government officials, social movement leaders, organizers with the Free Alex Saab movement, and many others. This included Camilla Saab, the wife of Alex Saab, Ivan Gil, the foreign minister of Venezuela, and freed Cuban 5 political prisoner René Gonzalez, and many others, intellectuals, activists, people committed to helping grow this international movement in defense of political prisoner Alex Saab, and really in defense of Venezuela's sovereignty and self-determination against criminal United States sanctions. So this Picket action, which is organized by the Venezuela Peace Committee in Winnipeg, the Fire This Time Movement for Social Justice Venezuela Solidarity Campaign, and Just Peace Advocates in Canada, here with the support of Venezuela Solidarity organizations and other individuals across Canada, is going to be dedicated to a report back from that conference, as well as our monthly consecutive Picket action. I wanted to start today's event by playing some videos from the conference to give you a bit of the flavor of the powerful words that we heard. So we will hear first from a message from Alex Saab, which he gave from prison, then from his wife, Camila Saab, who read a poem, and then from Rene Gonzalez, Cuban 5 political prisoner who was freed, and then we'll go right into our panel. So thank you again, everyone, for joining. I will set up the video now.
Quiero leerles una carta que les envié con motivo del foro el día de hoy. Les agradezco por honrarnos con su compañía hoy en Caracas, para conversar, analizar y generar propuestas que nos ayuden a seguir enfrentando este flagelo inmoral que es el Lawfare.
Esta llamada es de una prisión federal.
Harían falta muchos días para poder contarles todo lo que he conocido de esta funesta sociedad que pactaron con el mal en varios países, la ley y algunos medios de comunicación. Pero solo tengo 6 o 7 minutos, y acá donde el tiempo parece congelado sin dejar de andar, a veces con un simple cuento y demasiados días vividos, en fugaces 6 minutos se puede contar más. Este cuento sencillo es un mensaje del personaje que más valor ha perdido en esta novela del Lawfare. Su confusión, así como la situación de muchos, es completamente real. Les aseguro que de cada línea de su mensaje se podría hacer un foro. Solo hay que saber mirar. Él se llama el ser humano. Me pide que les diga que está muy preocupado, porque después de tantos años de mentir, engañar, calumniar y desinformar buscando dominar las vidas, había logrado sin darse cuenta domesticar también su conciencia, y ya su razón no podía distinguir tampoco entre el bien y el mal. Dice el ser humano que al principio pensó, ¿qué más da? Pero recientemente le avisaron que una de esas vidas, aún con 3 años de torturas, aislamientos, calumnias y oscura soledad, no habían logrado dominarla ni mucho menos dejar de luchar. Cuenta el ser humano que alarmado por esta falla, bajó enfurecido a los 20 metros donde estaba el cuarto oscuro de arena y sal que guardaba las vidas secuestradas que un loco custodiaba desde el mar. Pero sorprendido, encontró que esta vida, habiendo burlado su seguridad una vez más, abrazaba a 2 niñas suaves y hermosas que le decían papá. Mi Charlie de 3 y medio, mi Mimi de 6 no más. Dice el ser humano que al ver que esta vida tenía una familia real, apartó de sí su conciencia domesticada y le dio un chance de hablar. La vida le contó que por llevar alimentos a libres, bellas vidas bloqueadas, perdió su libertad. Y luego de ver más de 70 pruebas, varias confesiones y al menos 5 sentencias, le preguntó al ser humano, ¿y entonces qué? ¿Cuántas veces más he de ganar? El ser humano afligido y ahora sin su conciencia domesticada en él, reclamó a su socia la ley por tal bajeza. Extrañada, ella le recordó que era recatadamente corrupta y seria, así es que lo que una vez fabricado era, fabricado siempre será. Se fue a buscar a los medios para denunciar, pero Carson Tucker se había ido y los otros le dijeron que el mal pagaba más. Entonces el ser humano, urgido de liberar su conciencia, se recordó de una historia sobre una ley rebelde, que además de ser una simple ley, también era una costumbre. y que si las vidas la utilizaban sin aislarse, sin excluirse, y si a pesar de todas las diferencias la usaban para dialogar, para frenar conflictos, para encontrar soluciones por la humanidad, ella imparcialmente sería capaz de sentar de nuevo a los seres y hasta las conciencias más domesticadas volvería a liberar. Se llama la diplomacia, una nueva oportunidad. En el mundo se habla hoy que hay más de 2.500 prisioneros políticos. Con el incremento indiscriminado del uso del Lawfare, me atrevería a decir que hay muchos más. Pero todos los casos deben verse independientes, porque el sufrimiento de un preso político y su familia debe ser respetado y no usado como un título para lograr impunidad. Estoy seguro que me entienden los que como yo han sufrido actos de tortura física y psicológica solo por defender causas justas, o por querer obligarnos a levantar falsas acusaciones, o por defender el derecho a la vida o el derecho a la alimentación, a la salud, a la libertad de prensa o asociación. No deja de ser decepcionante para nosotros que a pesar de seguir encontrando herramientas jurídicas, estas parecieran insuficientes, ya que la justicia que nos está juzgando parece más bien un constante suicidio de la razón.
Esta llamada es de una prisión federal.
Por eso, para los que tenemos años padeciendo este mal, realmente lo que pedimos es que la diplomacia intervenga para que la razón se pueda salvar. He sido bendecido por el amor, comprensión, perseverancia y fortaleza de mi esposa, mis hijos y mis hijas, y el firme apoyo de mi gobierno, un gobierno humano por encima de todo, que no abandona y entiende el dolor porque lo sufrió y lo venció al nacer entre prisiones y torturas, y que sigue venciendo calumnias y persecuciones para que vidas que estaban secuestradas por la pobreza y la desigualdad tengan la esperanza de un futuro digno con oportunidades y justicia social. Para un prisionero político, el olvido es mortal. Por eso quiero hacer un llamado en favor de todos los prisioneros políticos del mundo y sus familias, en favor de los que se sienten por momentos olvidados, un llamado a la humanidad de los gobiernos y sus contrapartes, a que prioricen realmente nuestras vidas, a que no sean más pacientes con nuestro dolor y que por medio del diálogo que nos consigue la diplomacia, nos liberen del mundo del retorno eterno, sellemos la libertad y continuemos juntos este viaje hacia la paz total.
Buenas noches a todos. Quiero saludar al doctor
Good afternoon to all of you.
presidente de la Asamblea Nacional, allo ministro, allo viceministro presente,
Everybody here, the
Carlo
ministers,
Ron,
vice
allo
ministers,
diputado de la República,
also
a los compañeros
to
ponentes que me antecedieron, luchadores de derechos humanos,
representatives, comrades,
juristas,
people who are
profesores,
struggling for human rights,
periodistas, presidentes de
jurists,
gremios,
professors,
asociaciones, medios de
journalists,
comunicación. Quiero
presidents
saludar también a los
of
compañeros
trade
de la
unions.
Cancillería de
I also
Venezuela,
want to
hermanos y hermanas de lucha,
say hello to
amigos
comrades from
y amigas de
Venezuela,
otras
brothers and
latitudes,
sisters in the struggle,
compañeros de la red de
friends,
juristas de Venezuela
comrades from
y
the
familia
network
del
of
movimiento
jurists
Free
in
Alex Saab.
Venezuela,
Y
my
también,
family from the Free Alex Saab movement, and also
un saludo especial a los compañeros de Buena Fe,
special
todo su
greetings
equipo.
to the comrades from Buena Fe and their team.
Y entonces, cuando esto está
So
aprobado,
then,
cuando somos
when
iguales,
this has been proved, when we are
escribo con
equal,
tu vida y con
I
el mío,
write with
con tu
your
amor
name and
y
with
con los
mine,
míos,
with your
con
love
todos
and
tus
with
dolores.
mine, with
Y
all your
entonces,
pain.
ya somos
And then
diferentes.
we are
Porque
different
mi mano en tu hombro,
because my
como
hand
viejos
on your
amigos,
shoulder,
te
as
digo en
old
las orejas,
friends,
no
I will
sufras,
tell you, I
ya
will
llega
say
el
this
día.
to your ear. Do not
Ven,
suffer. The day is
ven
coming.
conmigo, ven con
Come with
todos
me,
los que a ti
come
se
with
parecen,
everybody
lo más
that
sencillo.
looks like you,
Ven,
people who
no
are
sufras,
simple.
ven conmigo,
Come, don't suffer.
porque
Come with
aunque
me,
no lo sepas,
because
esto
even if
yo
you
sí lo
don't
sé.
know,
Yo
I
sé
do
hacia
know
dónde
this.
vamos.
I
Y es
know where
esta
we're
la
going.
palabra, no
And this
sufras,
is the
porque
word. Don't
ganaremos.
suffer,
Ganaremos
because we
nosotros,
shall
lo más
overcome. We will
sencillos.
win.
Ganaremos,
Those of us who
aunque tú no
are
lo
the
creas,
simplest of people,
ganaremos.
we will
Pablo
win.
Neruda.
Even though you don't believe it, we will win. Pablo Neruda.
Hay hoy aquí reunidos
Today,
distintas mujeres y hombres
there are
de
different women
distintos
and men
idiomas con
here today
distintas nacionalidades.
that speak different languages and have different
Contienen en sí un
nationalities.
cúmulo de experiencias, de
They
vivencias que
gather
confluyen aquí por
experiences
lo sencillos.
that
Los
are
sencillos
today here
requieren
for
de
people
normas
who are simple.
jurídicas
People who are
que
simple
sean
need
respetadas como el
juridical
resultado de diferentes
norms. They
acuerdos
need
de la
laws that
sociedad
have
en
respected
virtud de la
and
convivencia en paz. Que
respect
puedan
of
garantizar,
social rules that can
que puedan
guarantee
garantizar su derecho a un
that can
plato de
guarantee
comida,
their right
una
to
vacuna o una
a
sonrisa sin que
meal,
eso sea considerado un
a
delito.
vaccine, or
Los
even a smile
sencillos,
without
a
that
quienes
being
unos
considered
buscan
a
usar en
crime.
guerras
People who are
cada vez
simple
más
that
hipócritas, con
are
tanquetas
being
de temerarios
used
decretos,
in wars,
ante lo que
increasingly
algunos prefieren taparse los
hypocritical
ojos
wars,
antes que enfrentar con valentía.
where
Los aquí
people prefer
reunidos
to cover their
en cada
eyes
una de sus
before facing
trincheras
this with
suman los
bravery.
granos
People
que
who are
hacen la
gathered here
montaña de la
today
lucha por la justicia social.
form
En estos
a
3
struggle
años,
for social
en mi familia
justice.
hemos
In the
sufrido
past 3
mucho,
years, in my
sí,
family,
y
we have
también
done a
hemos
lot, and
crecido, hemos
we have
aprendido,
grown a lot.
hemos
We
conocido
have
tanta
learned.
bondad,
We
como
have
si el universo, en busca de su estabilidad,
known
nos diera
a lot of
herramientas
goodness,
para
as if
vencer
the
al mal.
universe
Así
has
que
given
hoy no
us
puedo sino que
tools
estar
to
agradecida con
overcome
todos
evil. So
ustedes por
today, I thank
acompañarnos
you.
en este evento.
I thank you
Quiero
all for accompanying
agradecer
us in
por
this
todo el
event.
apoyo que
I want
nosotros
to
hemos
thank you
recibido
for the
en
support
estos
that we
3
have
años.
received
Gracias por
over the
ser
last 3
tan
years.
valientes.
Thank you very
Gracias
much
por
for being
hacernos
so brave.
entender
Thank you
que no estamos
for
solos.
helping us understand that we are not alone.
El Lawfare es una práctica
Lawfare
nefasta con la que
is
el
a
hegemón
terrible
busca
practice
torcer la voluntad
where
de los pueblos
hegemonic
determinados
power
a ser libres, soberanos y
seeks to
potentes.
dominate the
Entonces, en
peoples
esta
that want to be
forma de
free,
guerra,
sovereign, and
buscan,
powerful.
en algunos casos
In this type of
hacer que se
war,
abran
they
grietas
seek, and
en la lucha,
sometimes they
hacernos
are able
pensar
to
que estamos en una contradicción.
create gaps in our
También
struggle. They want
mienten
to show that we
descaradamente,
are in a
tan
contradiction. They
descaradamente
also
mienten que
lie.
parezca
They
ilógico
lie
dudar, como un
to make
reto
it
a la cordura. Y
seem
así ganan
illogical what we
tiempo,
do, as
ganan
if we were
espacio, ganan
countering
puesto, pervierten la
sanity,
diplomacia,
and this is
imponen
how they
teorías,
pervert
sistemas,
diplomacy. They impose
corrompen la paz.
theories and
Pero
systems that
además nos
corrupt
hacen
peace,
culpables de
but
los
they
llamados
also make
daños
us guilty
colaterales. El
of
caso de
collateral
Alex es
damage.
también el
The
resultado
case of
del
Alex's case
desespero
is
por
also the
doblegar la
result
voluntad del pueblo
of
venezolano.
this will to
Secuestrado en
break
plena pandemia, quizás algunos atrevidos
Venezuelan
llamaban
sovereignty.
exagerados a lo que
Some people
denunciaban
at the
que
beginning
Estados Unidos
called
se quería apoderar de
this
los
an
recursos
exaggeration
venezolanos.
to say that
Incluso si
the
tenía que
United
sufrir
States
el
wanted
pueblo.
to take over
3 años
Venezuelan
después de un
resources.
arranque de
3 years
sinceridad,
later,
Donald Trump lo confesó.
Donald Trump
No
confessed to
fuimos
this.
exagerados,
We were
ni
not
cuando denunciamos
exaggerated.
el intento de
We were
magnicidio
not
contra
exaggerated,
nuestro
not
presidente,
even when
ni
we
cuando dijimos que
denounced the
movieron un
attempt
buque de
of killing our
guerra en
president.
Cabo Verde
When
para
they moved
obligarlos a mantener
a
secuestrado y
ship in
torturar
Cape
a
Verde
Alex Saab.
to
Todo esto ha
in
sido
order to keep
confesado
Alex
por
Saab
los
kidnapped.
autores.
This has all been
Todo esto siempre
confessed
fue
by
verdad.
material authors.
Entonces,
This was
compañera
always
y
true.
compañeros,
So,
es
comrades,
vital que sigamos
it is
luchando,
crucial that we
estudiando,
continue
desmontando
struggling
el Lawfare del
and
que ha sido víctima el
tearing
pueblo
down
venezolano,
lawfare
con el que
that
buscan torcer a
Venezuelan,
nuestros
of which
funcionarios,
Venezuelan people
a las
have been
mujeres
victims.
y hombres de
They want
nuestra
to
patria.
subject men and
Propongo que
women
con
of
este
our
foro se
land
deje un
through
registro
this.
de propuestas para llevar
Propose
esta
that
lucha a
this
más
forum
espacios, a
creates
esos lugares
a,
donde se
a
intente
record of
normalizar
proposals to
la
take this struggle to
persecución
more
jurídicas
people,
con
to
fines
more
políticos,
places,
para así
where
avanzar
we
juntos,
show how
no nos soltarnos
the
la mano
judicial
y
sphere is
vencer
used
el
with
mal.
political
Por lo
ends.
sencillo, los
We
que ganaremos.
let's
Libertad
continue
para
struggling
Alex Saab.
for the simple people. Free Alex Saab.
En este mismo lugar quiero
So we'll save Renee Gonzalez for later. Those were the words of Alex Saab himself from US prison. You could hear the voice message interrupting because of the length requirements for his greetings, as well as from his wife, Camilla Fabry Saab, who is a tireless fighter for freedom for her husband and in defense of the people of Venezuela. So as I said, we're going to have a panel tonight of people that were on the ground. We heard those messages in person. We spoke at the international conference, and now we are here to hopefully report back and then continue our united work. So I wanted to start with Dan KOVALIK, who is a lawyer, a professor, and the author of several books. I hope you maybe have read them. And one of the more recent one is called The Plot to Overthrow Venezuela, How the US is Orchestrating a Coup for Oil. It was great being in Venezuela with Dan, and please, the floor is yours tonight. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks to everyone who showed up tonight. We all appreciate it. I have a few thoughts I want to share with you. One is that I had never met Camilla before, and I found her a very humble and powerful person. I wanted to say that. I was very impressed by that. I'm sure everyone who's met her thinks that. I mean, this is not the life she has chosen, right? This was a fate visited upon her against her will, and she has handled it with incredible grace and fortitude. So I just want to say that to everyone. And I want to share a few thoughts. Well, and the other thing about the event we were at was that there were people from all over the world, from Latin America, Africa, Europe, North America, the Caribbean, and it was a very impressive group that came to support Alex Saab. And I think that gave a lot of strength to the Saab family and to everyone in the movement, to me as well. You know, just to see people supporting this struggle. I just want to share a few tidbits that I have gotten by being, I'm doing some legal work for Alex Saab. So I've gotten to see and read a few things that might be of interest to you in the struggle, right? Things that you can share with people when you're debating and arguing with people. So one is when I was at the hearing in Miami in December, I guess that was, and I know a few of you were also at the hearing, including Roger. I saw you were here. I'm glad you're here, Roger Harris. One of the more dramatic moments was when this young lawyer who went to visit Alex Saab, he testified and really shocked, I think, the prosecution when he mentioned that he found 3 diplomatic pouches amongst Alex Saab's possessions. One was from President Maduro to the supreme leader of Iran, and I believe the other 2 were from Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, one to the minister, to 2 different ministers. But in any case, there were clearly diplomatic pouches, and they've been opened by clearly officials in Cabo Verde and clearly against international law, right? And what we found out later, or what I found out later, this was not brought out in the hearing, but there were marks on the exhibits presented to the court that the lawyer said he did not see when he saw the documents. What they were markings that showed that those diplomatic documents had been shared with the United States. So the US and Cabo Verde were on clear notice that this gentleman was a diplomat. And in fact, as I mentioned at the conference, Mark Espers, who was the defense secretary under Trump, in his recent memoir, he said that everyone knew that Alex Saab was a diplomat, and they were very worried about him being arrested for that reason. So those are very important things to point out. I just want to mention something else, and I didn't mention this at the conference. You know, you can only talk so long and about so many things, but one thing I've done is file an amicus brief with the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals on the issue of Alex Saab's diplomatic status. One of the briefs I filed was on behalf of, and I want you to write this down, this is very important, a gentleman named Sir Ivor Roberts. And the Sir indicates he is a knight of the United Kingdom. He was a diplomat himself. He was the ambassador from the UK to Ireland, and he later became an honorary Irish citizen. He helped negotiate the Good Friday agreements, which ended the troubles in Northern Ireland, and he was also involved in the negotiations for peace in the former Yugoslavia. This is a very serious guy. He's not a leftist either. If anything, he's probably a conservative. But I filed a brief on his behalf in which he said unequivocally that based on the facts, Alex Saab was and is a diplomat under international customary law that's existed for literally centuries. And why? Because there's really three indicia of someone being a diplomat that are important to deciding this issue. One, that the country, you know, you're purportedly a diplomat for has designated you a diplomat. That is very clear that Venezuela designated him a diplomat. Two, that the place, the country you are going to do diplomacy with has accepted you as a diplomat, in this case, Iran, and they did accept him as a diplomat. And three, that during the period in question, you were on your way to fulfill this diplomatic mission between your country, Venezuela, and Iran. All three of those existed at the time Alex Saab was arrested. And as Sir Ivor Roberts notes, there's some important things. So the prosecution said, yeah, but he wasn't a permanent diplomat. He was only a temporary diplomat. As Sir Ivor Roberts says, that is completely without relevance because, first of all, for centuries, there was nothing called a permanent diplomat. Most diplomats were temporary. It was a matter of a king or a leader, monarch sending an individual to another country to bring a message. And the key was you weren't supposed to kill the messenger or arrest the messenger or whatever, right? And so that is of no moment to international customary law. The other thing he mentioned, and this is of course key to all of us here, was that it's irrelevant that the U.S. does not recognize and did not recognize Nicolas Maduro as the proper president of Venezuela. As Sir Ivor Roberts points out, what is relevant is that Iran, the receiving country, did recognize Maduro as the president and did recognize Alex Saab as his diplomat. It is irrelevant that the United States did not. The U.S. cannot unilaterally decide who a proper diplomat is between two nations. And that is a very key issue in this case. And again, I tell you these things because most of the people on this call are activists in this struggle. And I want you to, kind of understand some of the subtleties and niceties of the legal issues that are still being considered right now at the 11th Circuit. And by the way, if anyone wants the brief of Sir Ivor Roberts or the other amici that I file briefs on behalf of, I'm happy to share them with you. They were very enriching for me as well. Anyway, I hope that's helpful to you. I just want to end by saying the cause of Venezuela is just. The cause of Alex Saab is just. I've studied this very thoroughly, and I believe that if there is any true international law in the world, that Alex Saab should prevail. Now, that may be a big if, given the state of the world we live in. But the law is on his side, morality is on his side, and I'm glad for everyone who is working on his behalf. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Dan KOVALIK for being with us here tonight and for going to Venezuela to share at the conference. You are correct. Many of us on this call are people that are involved in supporting Alex Saab, in organizing for his freedom and trying to make, I think we would all agree that what Alex Saab said about oblivion being deadly for political prisoners is what we're combating. And to do that, we need more information about his case. We need to understand really the contradictions of the US government and how this is so clearly a political case. There's no legal ground for what they're doing. And if there is, it's a clear violation of international law being committed by the United States. So thank you for adding to the arsenal of information that we need and helping us in our talking to people on the streets, which I hope all of us are doing as much as we can to talk about the case of Alex Saab. So thank you. I'm going to post in the chat in a second here a link to the videos from the conference. So Dan's presentation, as well as my own and others, are all in shortened videos on the Alex Saab YouTube channel. So I'll put that in the chat in a second. Thanks.
Thank you, Allison. Real pleasure. Again, big honor for me to be here with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. We will win. Okay. So now I hope that we have figured out that Geraldina's been able to find the translation function. Sometimes these things get difficult. But either way, Geraldina, I'm wondering if you would like to share some words now. We can test your microphone and see if that's going to work out. Hola, Geraldina. El tiempo está tuyo. Estás en muda. You're on mute.
Hola, ¿me escuchan?
Hello, can you hear me?
Sí.
Ok. Pido disculpas porque...
Okay, I apologize because my English is not that good, and since
conseguir la traducción.
I'm sorry, the audio is breaking up.
He podido realmente el evento que es por importancia de hablar.
Voy a quitar tu video. Insuficiente. Voy a quitar tu video. El señal está insuficiente, pero podemos escucharte. We can hear you very well. 1 second. Okay. Geraldina, try again.
Ok. Bien.
Sigue.
Estaba diciendo que es muy importante.
I was saying that it's very important to have had that event to discuss and to share information, because the case of Alex Saab does not only have to do with the human rights case regarding an individual, nor of it doesn't have to do with a state that is under attack as the socialist Bolivarian state of Venezuela. It also has to do with a global trend that imperialism would like to impose to push the threshold of suffering, to impose through coercive and unilateral measures, as the so-called sanctions are, to impose a habit of arrogance, right? Which does not have to do at all with the whole legal system. They want to impose this on saying that they are supporting human rights and peace, when actually we know that the nature of capitalism is aggressive, is about pillaging the resources of the peoples. It's about providing the benefits for a minority against the majority of the population who produce wealth. The case of Alex Saab, as it was explained at the forum in which Alison took part very strongly and determinedly, has been a proof of how this is a synthesis of all those issues and problems, because our interest is to multiply solidarity, and that solidarity should be anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, and anti-patriarchal, because we see that these sort of attacks, the so-called sanctions and coercive and unilateral measures, target especially women and the true progress of societies, because they want to impose a backlash, a backstep, a setback. So it's important to value the daily struggle of Bolivarian socialism, where women are leading in official positions, and they have been and are the fundamental pillar of a new message that reads that the peoples do not fall on their knees despite all those multiple capitalist attacks. So it's important to see, as the lawyer explained, that all violations made against all attacks against Alex Saab and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela are becoming paradigm, which will then strike all the countries that stand in battle. This is an example, for example, in the case of the revolution in Cuba, and thanks to the Cuban Revolution, we can discuss socialism again in this century after they made us believe that there was no alternative to capitalism. But the history is not over. And this is thanks to the commitment of people like Alex Saab, who have not remained in their comfort zone. They risked their lives in such a difficult moment as the pandemic. We shouldn't forget that he lost his father when he was in prison, and when he was going to Iran, this was a moment where the country was the strongest hit by the pandemics. Alex knew this because the United States had sent him a very clear message saying that if he stopped for 2 or 3 months, he would have been left alone, and he didn't do that. And naturally, we know how the history went down. Another important pillar of his struggle is that he has resisted alongside Camila. He has faced an undermining process, which has the purpose of making him seen as a disturbance, so that the society does not take a position on his case, because when people say that a state is a drug trafficker or that a person is doing horrible or illegal things, of course, it's very difficult to face that, to defend that person when you have such a media fence and attack. So even the head of the president, Nicolas Maduro, was set a price until
a una ministra o a un representante sindical de ir a defender su país.
when a person goes to international areas to defend their country, they were tagged. This was done with Camila, who is a human rights defender, and who, of course, is being persecuted by her country, first of all, Italy.
Que tiene una gran experiencia
And,
de Lawfare porque
I'm sorry, the audio is really breaking up.
Empezó con la criminalización de los movimientos populares en los años 70 y
in the
después
70s, popular movements were criminalized, and then
con la judicialización de la
bourgeoisie.
la Segunda República y después como
I'm sorry, the audio is breaking up and I cannot understand what she's saying.
Se mudó en una lucha de banda que lo utilizan para hacerse daño.
Now there's
en el mismo interior de los sectores de burguesía. Es un mecanismo nefasto.
This horrible mechanism that is being used, that is an attack on the peoples of Latin America and beyond. We have to really make an effort to make an analysis and also a practical effort to dismantle, to tear down the mainstream narrative and to bring truth as we are doing today, because this is good for the future. Thank you very much. Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab. Thank you very much, Geraldina Colotti, an Italian journalist, a writer, an international analyst, a former guerrilla, and a former political prisoner herself. It was really great to be in Caracas with you. We traveled a few days afterwards, after the conference together, to some projects I'll be talking about later. But thank you for sharing your perspective. Thank you, everyone, for your patience, for the technical issues with the internet. And of course, always thank you to Julieta and Mercedes for your translation during especially these difficult times. Our next panelist is also joining direct from Caracas, Venezuela. She is an organizer with the Free Alex Saab movement, as well as PCOA, the Anti-Imperialist Working Class Platform, and the Afro-descendant and African Anti-Imperialist International Summit. FRAVIA was key to helping to organize the conference that took place in Venezuela on Lawfare. And thank you for making the time to join us here today, FRAVIA. Welcome.
Hi, Alison. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Good evening or good afternoon for all of you. Well, it is exciting to see how many people is connected today. And thank you, Alison, and all of you for this important work you do to show and to speak up for, in this case, for our diplomat, Alex Saab, but in general for, you know, all the truths that lie behind the boundaries in Latin America, South America, and the world. Well, Dan and Geraldina were amazing, setting the ground and explaining since the beginning what has been this nightmare of having our diplomat kidnapped, and how is this a key piece in this puzzle against Latin America, against Venezuela in particular. This is a Monroe Doctrine Reloaded application, is a clear case of Lawfare, as Geraldina mentioned, and also Dan. And we are clear, and the family, of course, clear that this case is politically motivated. There's no judicial or legal argument that can stand in front of all the proof that our lawyers, the lawyers of Alex, have demonstrated and showed during all during the audience he had. And we are, well, regarding that part of the case, the legal aspect, we are waiting. The last audience was in December when Dan was there. And we are appealing that decision that didn't recognize his immunity, and we're waiting on that, on the decision to go forward in the course of appeal of Georgia. And let's see if that happens soon, because right now what is more urgent for his family and for the movement and for the Venezuelan people is that his health is in danger. His health condition is deteriorating. He had some preconditions, and he's also a cancer survivor, stomach cancer survivor. And he has not received medical care since he was in Cape Verde. That was visited and reviewed by the one specialist that Venezuela was able to send, and he was allowed to enter. He has not been allowed to see the sunlight, so there's no vitamin D in his system. The food is awful, and it's not only because he's Alex Saab, but it's also because, especially he's Alex Saab. And I said this because if you have seen some news about the detention centers and the federal prisons in the United States, you know this is a common issue. The food is expired, is full of insects, is low quality, and is scarce. Putting aside all the treatment they receive, like extreme coldness, et cetera, which are forms of torture. Torture is not only to hit you. Adding to that, that he has not been able to see his family in 2 years, and he has not been allowed to have a consular visit neither, which is a right for any citizen, but even more for a diplomat. So United States is playing a game here. We understand this is a game, a time game. We firmly are afraid and believe that they are playing the card to let's see what happened, and they don't want to move ahead with any other solution. And certainly they have blocked the legal process because it's politically manipulated. And as Dan noted, when he cited the books, the text from Mike Pompeo and Mark Speer, and well, recently the speech of former President Trump regarding what was he planning and all his regrets because they couldn't appropriate the oil of Venezuela, we don't have much more to prove. It's obvious what is the issue behind all of this. But certainly we need to move forward. We continue to help spread information, to visualize the case, to support and encourage the people around the world to get together and bring the voices of the Free Alex Saab movement in their countries, in their chapters. Recently, in this event we held in Caracas, in the international event, there was an idea that it was mentioned in some part from others members of the Alex Saab movements in the world, but Mr. René González from Cuba expressed it during his speech in the National Assembly, calling the Free Alex Saab movements in the world and the progressive movement in general to raise their voices and speak up in front of maybe the consulates, organize, writing letters. Everyone can contribute no matter how small they think is what they are doing. We need to keep this alive, this issue. And well, Alex is father to 5 children. 2 of them are little girls. 1 of them is 3. And of course, he has been 3 years in prison, so that baby girl doesn't know her father. And he has a boy who is a teenager, older boys, and this is a pain for all the family. Sometimes people forget this kind of thing. And as Alex said in his speech, in the letter he wrote for the event, forgiveness is the worst that can happen for anyone in prison, but especially for a person that has been kidnapped and is a political prisoner. So we encourage you all to see that he's a human being, putting aside whatever the media wants to portray him. And as one person told me, if he was that kind of people and Venezuela was so bad, United States wouldn't be attacking Venezuela and this wouldn't be happening. But well, United States and European Union, because it's not only United States, can stand that Latin America and other countries in the world, not only Venezuela, wants to really be exercise sovereignty, wants to really make their own decisions, to exchange goods with whatever you want, to use the currency you want, and raise up the possibilities of your own people in your own terms with your heritage and your background. And that's the inheritance we have in Venezuela. We have the Venezuelan people is a politicized people. Young people know the Constitution, know the rights. They are not afraid to speak up. There is freedom of expression in Venezuela. People go outside and exercise their rights, not only because they are right wings or not, even inside the left, we have, and we raise and we listen to the critics and the concerns. And this is what democracy is really about. This is what participation is really about. And this is what humanity is really about. So Alex Saab is also a human. He was not also only a businessman. Yes, he was a businessman, but he was the only businessman that decided to do this for his country and for his people at a time that no one wanted to do it. Because you don't need it to do that to have more money. You just did it because it was the right thing to do and you were the right person to do it. And you were risking your family, and he knew, as Geraldina mentioned, what was he risking, and he decided to do it. And until today, he's a loyal server and Venezuelan citizen. So thank you all for listening to me. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Fravia, for that overview of not only Alex Saab's case, and thank you for bringing, of course, our attention again to his critical health situation. Alex Saab is a cancer survivor, and he's not getting his care within U.S. prison. He's been denied his rights, and that makes our work more and more urgent. And also for bringing in a bit of why Venezuelans are defending Alex Saab with such fervor. We really being in the conference, meeting not only Camilla Saab, but also many young people who are dedicating their time and energy to freedom for Alex Saab, are organizing not in Caracas, but across Venezuela and other states, you know, painting murals, doing community events. The Free Alex Saab movement in Venezuela is a campaign. It's so much we can learn as people in North America about running a campaign, doing consistent work, really dedicating ourselves to Alex Saab's freedom and what that means if we unite and we organize together. So thank you for bringing that energy and analysis, Fravia, as a Venezuelan woman and fighter. It's really great to have you with us here today. I have a few thoughts that I wanted to share, but I'm going to share the video that we mentioned earlier, which is a video from Rene Gonzalez, a Cuban 5 political prisoner that was held. He was held in the United States for over 12 years. He was released a bit earlier than his other co-fighters and co-defenders of Cuba against terrorism. And him being at the conference, representing not only the dedication of the Cuban people to continuing to stand side by side with Venezuela against blockade and sanctions, but also their commitment to defend Alex Saab was really a powerful moment, I think, for myself and for everyone there. Not only to see a political prisoner, former political prisoner in the United States that had been freed, where we had fought for his freedom in a campaign in North America, and also as someone that is just an example of that continued commitment to the struggle for other political prisoners, knowing what it's like within US jails. So we're going to share a short message from Rene Gonzalez, And then I also met with Roger Jimenez, who is with the Venezuelan Postal Workers Union. He is the president of the Venezuelan Postal Workers Union. And he wanted to share some perspective about why he supports Alex Saab and what Alex Saab means to him as a Venezuelan. So there's 2 short videos, and then I will share some remarks.
I would like to remind you, I would like to tell you a story. Commander Chavez, several years ago told my daughter, I want to give you the hug that your father cannot give you. Alex Saab is going to hug his children soon.
Una celda puede ser una trinchera.
A cell can be a trench.
Lo supo Fidel.
Martí knew this, Fidel knew this, Chavez knew this. We knew this, and we know this, the 5.
Desde una celda se puede defender a
From
la
a
patria.
cell, you can defend your homeland. Even more so when the process is persecuting through a personal accusation, the punishment of a whole country. This represents us all. He speaks for all of us. He feels for all of us. He struggles for all of us. He defends all of us. Alex Saab defended the Venezuelan people already when in the exercise of the most elemental right. And he wanted to go against imperialism. He defended this when he resists this illegal illegality with which they are attacking not only himself on a personal level, but also Bolivar's motherland. This should be a reason for indignation of any decent citizen in the world. And we need to not be naive here. The government of the United States will use their corrupt system, an arbitrary system of justice, to fall with all the possible weight on him, also punishing his family. Taking him away from his captors will require this forum to project its case over the rest of the planet with strength. All the means that are morally and politically valid must be used to ensure his freedom, achieving the sympathy of governments, institutions, and people that all that we are able to. But in spite of this being very difficult, it is possible. The American government can be forced to do what is correct under the pressure of the world's public opinion and politicians who are moving things in the world right now. The case of the 5 is an example of this. We need to rescue Alex from the loneliness of his trench. We need to give back his wife, his children, his family, and his people to him. You have all our solidarity, accompaniment, and support. And we need to harness all of this from all over the planet. Let's bring him back home. Let's open the doors of his cell. Let's on this trench that will be empty. We need to project this other victorious battle. We need to unite for triumph, and we will achieve this. Thank you very much.
Roger Jiménez, presidente del Sindicato Nacional Bolivariano de Trabajadores Postales de Venezuela. En este momento nos encontramos acá acompañados de esta comisión importante que es el movimiento Alex Saab, el cual apoyamos y respaldamos desde nuestra República Bolivariana de Venezuela. Nosotros, la clase obrera, la clase trabajadora postal a nivel mundial, apoyamos esta iniciativa que tienen los camaradas, compañeros y amigos de todas partes del mundo para solidarizarnos con nuestros camaradas Alex Saab, el cual pedimos la liberación inmediata al imperio norteamericano que lo tiene secuestrado en este momento. Nosotros pedimos la liberación inmediata, reitero, de nuestro compañero Alex Saab. Ese compañero para nosotros significa mucho en nuestro país, en los momentos más difíciles de nuestra población y de esos momentos donde el imperialismo arreció y arremetió contra el pueblo venezolano. Fue una esperanza, fue para nosotros una alternativa a este colapso que pretendía los gobiernos del imperio norteamericano para desestabilizar nuestro país y para someter a nuestro pueblo venezolano en una desidia, en un colapso total, y poder tener ellos la oportunidad de apropiarse y de robarse nuestros recursos naturales. Por eso es que nosotros desde acá, desde Venezuela, desde Caracas, Venezuela, enviamos nuestra solidaridad, nuestro respaldo a nivel mundial, y que todos los camaradas a nivel mundial y compañeros se sumen a esta tarea, se sumen a esta dura lucha, pero que al final venceremos, porque el compañero Alex Saab vivirá y vencerá en nuestros corazones y va a estar con nosotros más temprano que tarde en nuestro país, porque lo queremos, lo respaldamos y luchamos a favor del camarada. Que viva la clase obrera, que viva el pueblo venezolano y que viva Alex Saab, que pronto estará libre. Muchas gracias.
Viva! That I think everyone could feel the passion and commitment of Roger Jimenez speaking as a Venezuelan about Alex Saab. I hope that inspires you as it has inspired me. So the international conference that took place in Venezuela that we've heard just a little bit about tonight, Lawfare against Venezuela, 3 years after the kidnapping of diplomat Alex Saab, was an important next step in the growing international campaign to free Alex Saab. It brought together, as others have mentioned, people from around the world, activists, intellectuals, artists, to talk about the case of Alex Saab, to arm ourselves with more information, materials, and what we need to really grow this campaign, which is most important for those of us living in the United States and Canada, here in the belly of the beast. The Free Alex Saab conference was really an experience that was an intensive day, let me tell you. It was a one-day conference. You will see in the chat the links to the videos, because it was a one-day conference really full of so many important speakers and people that were contributing to the case of Alex Saab. And I really want to thank the Free Alex Saab movement for organizing such a group of speakers to come and give presentations and talk about their experience and how they are working to free Alex Saab. I spoke during a panel called "The Role of the Media in Legitimizing Lawfare." Lawfare is a word that's being used to describe the US continuous attacks on Venezuela that they try to justify through the so-called legal system. So the declaration that sanctions, unilateral coercive measures that are imposed against Venezuela that deny people the right to food and medicine and well-being, that those are somehow legal in an international or in a US context, and that the arrest of Alex Saab is also a legal case. We know that this is not true. As Fravia said especially clearly, this is a political case. And so this is what we're talking about when we talk about lawfare. During my presentation, I spoke especially towards what I think is a big struggle for us here that are defending Alex Saab and fighting against US sanctions and attacks on Venezuela. And that is, there's, yes, of course, a media disinformation campaign around Venezuela, a demonization of the democratically elected government of President Nicolas Maduro, and lies being told about Alex Saab and what he was doing to procure food and medicine and basic goods for people in Venezuela. But more than that, there's a media blackout also. There is a complete ignorance of the media towards this important case for human rights. There is a complete absence of any critique of US foreign policy against Venezuela. And I could say the same, of course, from here in Canada. Searching the largest, CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, this is the largest mainstream media in Canada. And they only had 3 articles that mentioned Alex Saab at all. So this is the media blackout that we are talking about. This means that we have to work hard to make Alex Saab a kitchen table issue, something that is discussed by poor working and oppressed people who can identify with Alex Saab's work to circumvent criminal US sanctions on Venezuela and can understand the necessity for his freedom, because Alex Saab not only is having his human rights violated and is under constant pressure and is imprisoned by the United States, but because he's also being held up as an example by the US government of really how they hope to further isolate and cut off the ability for countries like Venezuela to trade with other sanctioned countries, for countries to cut through US hegemony in Latin America and in really around the world, and to say, we're going to trade with one another, we will find a way. And Alex Saab was that way, and the US has imprisoned him unjustly in order to make him into an example. So I'm going to share a few things that we got in the chat, some important tools. One of which is this book, Letters of Alex Saab from His Captivity. It has forward by Charles Hardy, who is a US-based Venezuela solidarity activist, and presentations from UN human rights expert Alfred Maurice de Zayas, and an African lawyer and defender of Alex Saab, Femi Falana, who was also present at the conference. There's a PDF version of this that we'll post in the chat for sharing, and I think it's an important tool for us to read and be using in the campaign for Alex Saab. And then I'm going to go ahead and load up a few photos so I can share with you just a little bit about the experience before we go into our greetings from the picket here today. So this is what it was like being at the Alex Saab conference. This is the Teresa Carreño Theater in Caracas, Venezuela. You can see the 300 plus attendees eagerly listening to one of the panels featuring William Castillo, who is Venezuela's Minister for Anti-Blockade Policies. This is the panel where I was able to speak, featuring co-organizers and co-fighters from the United States, from Venezuela, and from also from Argentina, where there's a YouTuber is actually speaking there who has covered the case of Alex Saab extensively. Then it's myself and Camilla Saab, as Dan mentioned. Really, it was a pleasure to meet directly Camilla Saab, who had this struggle imposed on her and her family and is tireless in her fight. We also met many young Venezuelans active in the case for Alex Saab. These folks are all members of the movement in Venezuela of mutual solidarity between Cuba and Venezuela. So they are Cuba solidarity activists fighting for the case of Alex Saab. And then, as we saw in the video, this is Rene Gonzalez, Cuban 5 political prisoner. So the atmosphere of the conference was one of dedication, of commitment to continuing the struggle for Alex Saab, and of working to break this media blackout and the media control around the case, the media silence around the case of Alex Saab. We spent another few days traveling throughout Venezuela, visiting places such as the National Assembly. This is outside of Venezuela's National Assembly. And that day, the Venezuelan National Assembly passed a resolution marking the 3 years since the kidnapping of Alex Saab. We also had some late night meetings, including one with Venezuela's Minister for Communication and Information, Freddie Nanez, who is here in this photo, who emphasized to us the importance of working in all spaces for Venezuela, and again, breaking through this media silence and misinformation campaign. So he talked about important campaigns and the importance of working in social media on YouTube and Twitter and TikTok, but also of the media that we can create, and the spreading of the importance of the case of Alex Saab that we can talk about by organizing public meetings or opening public spaces. And gave us a bit of a push to continue this important work leading up to the elections in Venezuela taking place in the next year. We also visited Venezuela's newly launched School for International Communication. It is a school wherein they are training people in the battle of ideas, which is an idea developed and initiated by Fidel Castro, Cuban revolutionary, which was also embraced by Comandante Hugo Chavez. And this school is training international combatants in this battle for justice. And there was a presentation about the US's attempted coup in 2002. And this is a photo we took there with some of the international delegates. These are photos taken on the streets during the attempted coup, where we were witness and saw directly the violence of the coup supporters against people in Venezuela who mobilized massively in support of President Hugo Chavez. The coup only lasted 2 days before the mass mobilization of Venezuelan people in defense of the Bolivarian revolutionary process brought Hugo Chavez from where he had been kidnapped back to the presidential palace. And it was a powerful moment to see those photos directly again. Then myself and Geraldina spent time traveling through different parts of Caracas, one of which was a Venezuelan housing project called Jorge Rodriguez Padre. It's somewhere I've been fortunate to visit before, where Venezuelan workers are spending part of their working days helping to build their own houses and being retrained in plumbing, electrical work, engineering, all that is necessary to construct housing. We talked about Alex Saab. They spoke about the impact of the sanctions and blockade on their daily lives, as well as on the housing project, which has had problems procuring basic materials at different points. But these folks, mostly led by Venezuelan women, are committed to developing their housing project, and really their united community struggle and organized struggle against further US attacks. You can see the beautiful view in the mountains in Caracas there. We also held up high our sign for Alex Saab and got enthusiastic support, and we're joined by the mayor of this area of Antimino, which is Jimmy Gudino, also a strong fighter against US attacks on Venezuela. So that is really just a small flavor of what it was like being in Venezuela and at the Free Alex Saab conference, where not only did we talk to one another, but we organized and made plans for our continued coordination of actions and events and our continued work together. And one thing I wanted to mention at this point was, of course, the Free Alex Saab postcard. So the last picket action, we've been discussing about the Free Alex Saab postcard, encouraging people to join the campaign, to order postcards of your own. We've sent out over 700 postcards across Canada and the United States, and also now have distributed these to folks at the Alex Saab conference, and those folks represent many countries across Latin America and Africa. This postcard campaign is initiated by the Fire This Time Venezuela Solidarity Campaign, and also endorsed by the Anti-War Committee, which is based in Minneapolis in the United States, who's also distributing these postcards and hitting the streets with them. It's addressed to US President Biden. And the idea is that these can be handed out at events and actions. They can be presented, during webinars or forums as a way for people to not only get the basic information about the case of Alex Saab and criminal sanctions against Venezuela, but to take action, to sign one, and to help flood the White House and President Joe Biden with the demand to free Alex Saab. So I spoke about this postcard at the conference, received a very warm reception, people excited to get involved, and I want to encourage people again to please email me and the Fire This Time Venezuela Solidarity Campaign, and we will get these postcards directly into your hands as part of our ongoing and continuing work together. I wanted as well, before we're going to open up the floor in a second and invite folks to give greetings tonight before we do our group photo. But I did want to also say that there will be another report back action featuring more of the international guests, especially those in the United States, coming up. So stay tuned for more of a report back as well from the Free Alex Saab conference in Caracas, Venezuela. The action here today is the 28th consecutive monthly picket action for Free Alex Saab and US-Canada Hands Off Venezuela. At these monthly actions, we not only hear from an excellent panel, like we have just heard from Dan KOVALIK, FRAVIA MÁRQUEZ, and GERALDINA COLOTTI, but we've also take time to hear from those of us that are organizing across Canada and parts of the United States in defense of Alex Saab. So I need to just send a few quick invitations to those that are ready to give us greetings tonight. And again, say thank you so much to everyone for joining. And then we'll go ahead and get ready for our group photo. So the first person I have to give greetings tonight is Andrew Barry. Andrew is an organizer with Mobilization Against War and Occupation, Vancouver's Peace Coalition. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Allison. I think, as you just mentioned about one of the most important aspects of the case of Alex Saab is the media blackout and the media disinformation campaign that the United States and its allies in mainstream media and other Western countries are utilizing to either justify the continued imprisonment of Alex Saab, to continue the ongoing genocidal campaign of blockade and sanctions against the people of Venezuela. And it is something that the United States, unfortunately, is an expert in doing, in using media disinformation and blackout to achieve their goals of imperial and colonial needs. This is, as you mentioned about, as we heard from René González, one of the Cuban 5 heroes, it was very important in that case. Over 25 years ago, when that case began, the United States did a very, very important and brutal, unjustified attack in the media against the Cuban 5. And outside of Miami, they tried to silence the case. And it was something that they did very specifically to try and keep people away from using the Cuban 5 as symbols of resistance against US domination and aggression against Cuba and against all developing countries. And as Fravia mentioned earlier, one of the most dangerous things for the United States is the sovereignty of Venezuela, just like it was for the sovereignty of Cuba and all developing countries and all countries under attack from US aggression and imperialism. And I think it's very important that we always notice and make louder that attack on the sovereignty of Venezuela and Cuba. And ironically, hypocritically, and very angering, yesterday, many people saw that US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that on the International Day of Torture, that the United States is always going to be a voice against the use of torture. How could the United States possibly ever say this, considering their entire track record, their entire existence is of torture of oppressed people and oppressed nations? From Iraq, the case of Abu Ghraib. From Afghanistan, they've been imposing war and sanctions on for over 20 years. The use of torture against Cuba for over 61 years with an immoral blockade. Stealing a portion of Cuba, Guantanamo Bay, and having prisoners there with no rights whatsoever, torturing people to death. This has been a campaign defend Venezuela, defend Alex Saab, and continue to be the voice here in the belly of the beast for defending Alex Saab and to end all the brutal and criminal sanctions from the United States and Canada on Venezuela and all developing nations. Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab. Thank you, Andrew. And Karen Rodman is here from Just Peace Advocates. Karen, would you like to share any words today?
Sure, just very briefly, thanks again for keeping the drum beat going every month. I mean, the piece of just resisting and being there and speaking clearly is so important. I say that often as I join you, but I really want to echo it, and to be able tonight to listen and feel like we just get a glimpse into what you saw and the others saw of being in Venezuela at the conference, and to consider Lawfare, which is something our organization considers a lot about in regard to Israel and Palestine and other areas that we work on. So thank you for that. And and just for us at a level to be really, and just as Andrew said, really focused on the sanctions and the sanctions that are put on beyond what even the UN has put on here in Canada under the Special Economic Measures Act and other legislation and regulations following the belly of the beast in the US in that regard. So thanks again for this, and free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab. Thank you, Karen. We earlier also had Mary Carmen Guevara, who is here from Alba Movimientos in Ottawa, Canada. She had to run away for a family emergency, but wanted to share her solidarity with everyone. She is a strong fighter in defense of Venezuela and other just causes. And so thank you to Mary Carmen Guevara for being with us here tonight. As we get ready for our group photo, I realized that I didn't actually properly introduce my own self, so I thought I would do that now. My name is Allison Bodine. I am the coordinator of the Fire This Time Movement for Social Justice Venezuela Solidarity Campaign. Also author of the book Revolution and Counter-Revolution in Venezuela, which was from Battle of Ideas Press. And I will put a link in the chat about the book and how you can get a copy. I really appreciate your support. And I hope you find the book to be a valuable tool, as I said, in this continuing battle of ideas, something very significant to the world today, as we fight for just causes against US attacks, sanctions, and Canada being lockstep right beside. So that is something I wanted to put in the chat. And then I have just heard back from Roger Harris. He is with Task Force of the Americas in the United States and is someone that is a tireless fighter as well for Venezuela and against and demanding freedom for Alex Saab. So I wanted to ask Roger if he had a few words he'd like to share before we go into our group photo. Welcome, Roger.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you, Fire, this time, and thank you for the other sponsors of this amazing online picket line. I think you said this is your 28th picket line. This is terrific because the fight to free Alex Saab is a fight for a better world. It's a fight for a better world because it's a fight against US imperialism. The sanctions that started against Venezuela, they were started by President Obama, and he certified that Venezuela was an immediate threat to the national security of the United States, a threat to the United States. Could you imagine Venezuela threatening the United States? It's just the opposite. But it wasn't really a lie that Obama made because President Trump followed that seamlessly, and then President Biden followed that seamlessly because Venezuela is a threat, not a military threat, but it is the threat of a good example. It's the threat of what a better world can be. And the sanctions are designed precisely to prevent that world from emerging. So we are very grateful for Alex Saab because he is a fighter in that. And we look forward to his release, but we understand that he is in jail right now, not because he committed any crime. He's a political prisoner. And the reason why Alex Saab is in jail right now is because he defied US imperialism. He defied it for Venezuela, for Cuba, for Nicaragua, and for the 39 other countries that are under US economic sanctions and other sanctions imposed by the UN as well. So we say, free Alex Saab, a better world is possible. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Roger. An awesome hat. I think we got those in Tijuana or before, but I did want to say the Free Alex Saab Committee is kind of a organization, a loose organization of those of us in North America that are working for freedom for Alex Saab. If you want to get involved, please do contact me. Fire This Time Movement for Social Justice, Venezuela Solidarity Campaign, is working alongside others and many diverse organizations. And the next thing that we'll be working on together is going to be another report back from this conference. There's so much content that we can share and important messages to share, especially from those that attended from the United States. There's other participants that I'm looking forward to hearing from and their perspective. So stay tuned for an announcement for another report back from the Lawfare conference taking place in the next 2 weeks. I would say 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have all those materials out and organized and put together. So I'm going to start sending the invitation here to folks to be promoted as panelists. That means that you will be able to turn on your camera and participate in the group photo, which is a tradition of our online pickets, where we can best replicate what it would be like to be gathered with one another in front of a local US consulate, in front of the White House, you know, in many different ways. So I'm going to be sending those invitations. If you did not receive one and you'd like to receive one, please raise your hand and I will make sure you get one. You will hopefully get one in the next minute. Sometimes this takes a minute to do because there's lots of us here online. but I can already see folks getting their flags out, getting their signs. Do not worry if you do not have a flag or a sign. Definitely your presence is the best gift, and really appreciate everyone's participation tonight. It's been a great picket action. We've heard from Dan KOVALIK, from FRAVIA MÁRQUEZ in Venezuela, from GERALDINA COLOTTI, who is still in Venezuela, but is an Italian journalist and former political prisoner. And like we've mentioned, have really armed ourselves with more information that we need to fight against US sanctions and attacks on Venezuela and demand freedom for Alex Saab, as well as, of course, I will say again, the postcard. So folks are still raising their hands, and I'll keep on going with this here. And then we'll actually unmute everybody as well, so we're all able to chant together. We'll turn off interpretation. I would be amiss to really give a really enthusiastic thank you to Julieta and Mercedes for tonight's making tonight a fully bilingual webinar. It's especially difficult with technical challenges, and I really appreciate their work and patience and constant support. Again, if you have not received the invitation to rejoin as a panelist, and you would like to be able to turn on your camera and raise your voice, please raise your hand in the chat and I will happily send you an invitation. Oh, here we go. Oh. Good morning, everybody. The next monthly picket action, pencil it in your calendars, will take place on Tuesday, July 25th. July 25th. Katerina, yes, don't worry about chanting. Don't wake up your household. Thank you for staying up with us here tonight. Okay, I think that is everybody. All right. Okay. Heist, raise your hand. I'll hold up my card here. Let's say together. Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab. Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab. Free Alex Saab.
Alex Saab. Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab. Free
Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab.
And yes, Jessica, yes, venceremos, we will win. That was the overarching theme of the conference against lawfare, marking 3 years since the kidnapping of Alex Saab by the US government. We will win. We will have victory. Alex Saab will be home if we work together, if we unite, if we raise our voices and organize. Free Alex Saab.
Free Alex Saab. Free Alex Saab.
Good night, everybody. Venceremos.
Venceremos.
Venceremos, Alex.